thanks for being there. It's still the front burners, and we are having the policy discuss segment. Now let's turn to a new conversation. Before the break, we talked about the bill to amend the act that provides that the federal government has ownership of natural resources in Nigeria is vested in the federal government. Now let's look at another bill. Seems like a season of bills flying here and there at the National Assembly. Dr. Didaius actually said it looks like a backdoor to restructuring. Well, that's another subject matter. But if we look at this new bill that has also passed second reading at the National Assembly, it's a bill to remove impunity enjoyed by the vice president, governors. This has scaled second reading. So the bill aims to eradicate corruption or curb corruption, eradicate impunity, and enhance accountability of public office holders. This issue of immunity enjoyed by governors, by vice president in Nigeria has been one issue that has been debated for a very long time. Now, let me tell you what the sides to it are. So those in support of it say that when there is immunity, it means that there is no distraction. The governors, the VPs, even when corruption cases are brought against them, there is no distraction, so it allows for a continuum of government, that those who are against say that these allows corruption to happen. As what we've seen sometimes is when they will leave office, little or nothing is done regarding any case of corruption that has been raised against any serving officer, in this particular case, governors and vice presidents. I do not talk alone on the show. You know that by now if you've been a regular viewer of the show. So I still have my co-anchors with me, Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze and, of course, Oyinpreye Krumale, who are waiting to dive right into the issue. Doc, impunity, the bill to remove immunity, the bill to remove immunity that governors and the vice president enjoy has just scaled second reading. They say it will take away impunity. So we need a formula for this. You know you have a formula, the one that brings corruption. So this one maybe could be remove immunity, and then you get impunity out of the way. So we need to work out that formula. But for now, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think it was a harvest of bills scaling second reading yesterday, over 9 of them, of course, as presided over the Speaker of the House. And then, of course, all of them were looking at the various and critical aspects of the Nigerian Constitution, which a number of people feel does not work, and that there's a need for us to overhaul that Constitution comprehensively so that it can work. But yes, people talk about impunity because the law is there. But I also think that it's important for us to actually understand the foundation and the background. I'm not a legal person, but if you look at Section 308, of course, which of course empower these categories of people to enjoy this immunity, it was to cover what they do lawfully within government and not things that are extra-governmental. And I think to that very extent, it should not really be the excuse for impunity for people. And I think those framers of the Constitution, what they had in mind was the fact that people who are subversive will not take advantage of a lack of protection to create political instability within the political space, and such that those who are also elected to govern are given the free hand to make choices and decisions on behalf of those they represent. And I think these are the real basis why the immunity clause is enshrined in the Constitution of nations, not just Nigeria. But I think beyond removal of the immunity clause, there are fundamental issues that we need as a country to address. And I think that those were part of the things that Dr. Adedayo was speaking to earlier on, while we looked at the State Control of Resources Bill that also scaled second reading, was the fact that there are bases for law to work. For laws to be able to have their due effect is the fact that, of course, there are some certain value system that we need to imbibe. Like somebody once said, if lies become a law, truth naturally become a rebellion. And I think that's the environment in which we are operating, where lies are made into law and truth become like a rebellion. And I think really that what we need to put in place is to see how we can enshrine truth as the law so that the lies become rebellion and then they can actually be punished. These are the challenges that, of course, we face, because when you look at it, things that people do, even outside of government, and these are issues that we contend with as we move around the city on a daily basis, that even people who are accusing those who are governors that they are impunity is ruling and reigning, also themselves are also same, because when it comes to that, your local environment, and there are laws and rules that are supposed to govern behavior, and we see them obey in breaches rather than in the art or the spirit of that law. And I think that fundamental thing needs to be addressed first and foremost, so that whether it is those in power or those who are aspiring to get power, understand that power must be used reasonably and responsibly. And if that is not addressed, even removal of the immunity clause will actually mean not so much. Because the truth of the matter is that the guy who is in power is the one who determines how the apparatus and the instrument of state force is deployed. And so, even when there is no immunity, in the Constitution, he determines how police and the armies are deployed, or anti-corruption agency are moved. They are the one who appoint the judges, which are, of course, issues that we have to deal with today's current democracy. And you remember that in the last election of 2020 in America, one of the critical issues that was at stake was the fact that the judiciary was stopped. That certain people of ideological leaning are made to the position in the judiciary. So it tells you the subjectivity around democracy, and that's why I was so happy with the postulations of Bishop Hassan Kuka recently about the delusion of democracy. That a lot of people think that there's a way we can make laws to work. That is huge delusions. Because throughout all human history, if you even read the works of Karl Marx, he postulated that laws are not made to govern the ruling elite. It's actually made to control those who are outside of power. So when state laws are made, it's not made for the elite, it's meant for those who are outside of power. And I don't think we can ever reach that utopia when laws will begin to be implemented for people who are in power. So to that extent, I feel that there's a lot that we need to do in terms of, first of all, conscientizing the entire populace of what constitutes right and what constitutes wrong. That if all of us have a common humanity to understand, because what is at stake here is that I value blessing. And if I'm the Christian that I am, I should be able to see in blessing an image and the likeness of the God that I worship. And if I have a reverence for the God that I worship, I should be able to have a reverence and respect for her, because she is the exact image and the likeness of God. And until we get to that level of consciousness in dealing with our fellow humans, whether they are subordinate to us or they are over and above us, we will not be able to actually, laws will not be able to work. And I think that is what is grossly missing in our political space.
You know, I find it interesting that while the House of Rep is moving a bill to remove immunity for the vice president, the governors, and the deputies, the Senate is actually seeking the opposite for legislative members. So it's quite interesting that one chamber in the National Assembly wants immunity for the vice president and the governors and the deputies removed. The Senate wants immunity for senators and the reps. So this issue of immunity, there's a lot about it. Now, while I understand that the argument for those who support is that it will ensure that they're not distracted, it allows for government to be a continuum, but it also creates the chance for them not to be held accountable. Let's take the tenure of governors and even vice presidents, the deputy governors as an example. 4-year term in Nigeria. So some get to do 8 years. For each 4-year term, it means that for the first 4 years, for example, where there are allegations of corruption, you don't attend to it, or you're not being investigated or asked to step aside to resign while you're investigated, you still preside as the chief executive officer of the state. You are still the deputy governor. You are still the vice president. You enjoy all the perks. You have all the privileges that may even tamper or hinder investigations for that 4 years. So if you are re-elected back to office, that's another 8 years that your matter or your issue or your case or whatever allegation is not touched. They're waiting for you to hand over before more steps are taken towards that allegation or charges that are raised regarding maybe appropriation of funds, abuse of power, and other related matters. So what that does is that you are stalling justice. If there is a case for justice to prevail, you are stalling justice. Imagine 4 years, 8 years. After that time, given what happens in our political setting, so if you change political party, because we also recall very clearly what was said during the tenure of Idahosa Osamhanze as the APC national president, whether he was joking, but I think Nigerians took him seriously. So when you cross over to the APC, if you've been a sinner in any other party, your sins are forgotten. If we interpret that to, we can interpret that right, to mean that if you had been involved in corruption, so after your 4 or 8 years tenure as a governor, deputy governor, or vice president, so if you move over to the ruling party, nobody opens the book to ask what happened during your time. So that is equal to justice being denied. But if we remove the immunity to say, if there are criminal charges, if there are charges of misappropriation, charges of corruption leveled against you, you step aside and let the investigation be done. Now, if you were found guilty, whatever action needs to be taken will be taken. I think it will make political office holders, it will make governors sit up and know that you can be held accountable while you are a sitting governor, while you are a deputy governor, while you are a vice president, not when the damage has been done years after. We're not calling to book what was done yesterday. It makes it very difficult for justice to be served. And that's where we cannot deter those who see them as role models and are also mapping out strategies, making their plans that when they get into power, because they can do whatever it is they want to do. Nobody would ask, people may ask questions, but nothing will be done until they step aside. Then we'll have that perpetuity of corruption.
Yeah, but it's good to just put in context that I'm not holding brief for Adams, but the fact that it was just an idiom to say that hostility end.
That cannot be an idiom. That cannot be an idiom.
It was because the person that actually was
they
referring
are elderly. They are elderly
the person
people.
he was actually referring to didn't hold any political office or had opportunity to be in power and to say, oh, because you have stolen money. And I don't think that was what was in fact. And it is good, really, properly to put that in context, but also to say that...
Look, sorry, let me just react to that. You know that idioms have meanings.
Yes.
Sometimes you're figuring
but you don't need to interpret them
that's what I'm saying, that they have nuances. Because they have nuances, it can be interpreted in several other ways.
People can decide
I chose to
take
interpret
meaning,
it this way, which some Nigerians also
people are taking it
interpretation
to mean what it means. And I don't think... Adams does not understand what the law says about some certain things, but also to understand that even the principle of immunity, as is enshrined in our Constitution, Section 308, does say that, yes, we're in office. But there's also a provision on how these issues are to be dealt with. The dysfunctionality of our political system is actually what the problem is. That if a governor is found of gross misconduct, the state assembly really have the power to impeach him. And then he has left office.
Do we really see that happen?
Yes, we don't see it happen. And that is why I'm also saying that even when you remove the immunity clause, if the state assembly are not prosecuting him, is it the agency that is appointed by his party that will now come to prosecute him? So these are all the nuances that we must also look at while we are talking about some of this. That's why I said the critical factor here for me is our value reorientation, so that we are able to be clear enough about what is right or wrong. You see, when Adedayo was speaking, he talks about the position of the law, that it seems to be confused. Because the way our lawyers are trained in this school is that they have to imagine themselves defending or speaking against the provision of Constitution. So which means, if there's a defendant, you have to argue for the plaintiff and you argue for the defendant. And so those academic exercise that's happening in legal term eventually is brought to the bench, and then the judge take decisions on what they are supposed to be. But of course, you will continue to have those debates, because if they hire you to come and speak for a thief, you have to defend the thief, because that's what your profession promises you, and that is why you are called learned, that you can interpret the law whichever way you want.
Innocent until proven guilty, right?
Okay, so a thief is not a thief, and is not guilty until proven guilty by the law.
All right.
And I'm coming. And
who intends to be
the law that has the right to pronounce a man a thief has made a way for a lawyer, for him to have right to a lawyer to defend him and to speak for him. So thieves are privileged people, I must say.
I wonder where you're going with this.
So okay, let's go back to this our conversation. Section 308, it grants immunity from civil and criminal proceedings. Civil and criminal proceedings against to the president, vice president, governors, and deputy governors. Now, the institution of government is not immune to being taken to court. Either the federal government, the state government, or the local government chairman. And the personality that is occupying that place. Because he is the chief executive. When they say the presidency sounds ambiguous though. But however, they are just referring to it as the gamut of the institution of government. So who heads the presidency? Of course, it's the president. So the president is not immune for being taken to court. But however, he is being taken to court as an institution. But it would not have to do with him personally.
We're talking about the one that has to do with him personally.
If it's going to do with him personally, I believe there is also a section that is provided that the government, yes, I know. So I have to bring both into play here. Now, whilst in office, Doc mentioned it very well. Whilst in office. So when he's out of office,
yes,
he can still be called upon to come and give account. Obasanjo appeared before the Oputa panel. Now, no, yes. And
when you mentioned Obasanjo, I just laughed because I know
yes, he appeared in Oputa panel. He appeared in Oputa panel.
They had the money together.
It was Doc that said that. So he appeared over, Puta panel. If you remember vividly, there was the ICPC and the EFCC was waiting for one of the southeastern governors. Immediately he was done. Immediately after his handover speech that evening, wanted to escape. They were waiting for him at the airport. And they clamped, he was going to the US, and they clamped him down. Sir, you need to answer for some of the allegations. Why? Because they have been trailing the transactions, they have been trailing some of his activities, and it has painted a picture that, look, there are things that he needs to answer for. If you remember vividly, there was some form of argument and banter coming between the former EFCC chairman and the former governor of Zamfara State, who is now the Minister of State for Defense. There were a lot of things in public, and there were counter accusations of who was exchanging bribe, who was bribing this, and who was siphoning public funds. It's there. However, we must not allow the person, the occupier of the office, to come and be answering for criminal proceedings and all of that whilst in office. It's going to derail the obligations, the responsibility that has been saddled on him. All the millions of people that voted for him to do A, B, C, and D is going to derail that purpose. However, the political opposition too are going to take advantage of that. Mr. Fubara, he's part of that. You see all these things happening. I don't want to go there, so Doc does not drag us there.
No, you've gone there already.
No, I'm just referencing it. Just by the way,
why would you allow a Doc to lie?
You've gone there already.
Just a wave of the hand. So that is for that. If we're to go that direction, with the level of political opposition that we have in this country, no chief executive will be able to do anything. And you know one thing, it is not good if the legislative arm of government is saying, why would the vice president and the president and the deputy governor be enjoying immunity, and they're now putting for themselves that, look, we have to enjoy immunity. They already have immunity. Whatever they say within the jurisdiction of the National Assembly, you cannot hold them accountable for that. Now, you could remember there was a senator that said his wife was a senior advocate of Nigeria and one of the courts in Nigeria, and that he spoke to his wife to sway the hands of justice in favor of some of his senators in the Senate, and he was not held to account for that, even though lawyers, pundits have been coming out that, look, they need to prosecute that matter. The wife, who is a lawyer, a very senior lawyer in the country, and themselves, that they need to answer to the law. But that still, as we speak now, nothing has happened. If I should take your mind back to what happened during Obasanjo's administration, when there was a fracas between him and his vice, Atiku Abubakar, and Atiku Abubakar was going to be removed as the vice president. It went to the court, and the court said, look, you were elected together, one single ticket, as the president and the vice president. So it is also seen that the vice president was elected.
To the president should happen
to the vice president. So if the immunity that the president enjoys, governors enjoy, must enjoy by their deputies.
Is the most important person. For vice presidents, yeah.
The president does not govern alone.
Yes,
there is a deputy, and both of them occupy the position of president.
He's the most important because it's the president. But from all you said, I get your point. I get the argument, which I said that it's the argument of those in support of immunity for the vice president.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention before you stopped me,
okay.
And that is it. Whilst the crafters of our laws are very, very ingenious to protect the office of the president, the vice president, the governor, and the deputy governor, it also gave leave and strength to the legislative organ of government to serve as the courts in this case, to see if there's a reason to impeach the person of the president or the governor in place. And they've given it so that they can see, I'm like, okay, we see that the president or the governor, as the case will be in the House of Assembly of the state, that the governor has committed an infraction, an impeachable offense, so we must get him out. Then they can now follow the constitutional procedure of writing to the Attorney General of the state and to institute proceedings of impeachment against the governor. So I don't really see it as a way of protecting, overprotection or that is give them the immunity to act in a way that gives them a way like they are acting with impunity and carrying out criminal activities. No. The thing is, the institutions of government that has been saddled with the basic responsibilities to make sure that action is taken against anyone who comes, whether the chief executive at the federal level or state level or local government level is removed from office, is there. We need to follow them. Then they need to be independent and not to be aprons of the chief executives.
Yeah, but we find that many times they are apron tied to, or their strings tied to the apron of the governors.
We're not forced to it,
yes, they weren't forced, but when you have a system where all the legislative members in the state assembly, almost all of them belong to the same party as the governor, so it's almost like, hey, it's our own, it's family affair. So family members don't really fight family members. They just go in the same direction. That's what we find. Except when it's political, that's when you find impeachment happening, like the case of Edo State, where the deputy governor was impeached, and several other impeachments that we've seen. Impeachments based, though when impeachment happened, you will find allegations.
It was brought back.
Yes,
they brought him
but
back.
he was impeached for a period of time. So,
yeah, but that is what I was actually saying. You see, it's just good for us to understand the intention of the framers of our Constitution. Why Section 3 speaks clearly about the immunity of the president, the vice president, the governor, the deputy, against civil and criminal proceedings while they are in office, is there. We cannot interpret that section in isolation of Section 188 that says that if there's gross misconduct in the office, the members of parliament, or in this case, the state assembly, should impeach the governor so that he can face the law. Why we are not centering our conversation around this issue is what the problem is. And I think this is why I say, and I will continue to emphasize, that's my opinion, personal opinion, that the problem is really not with leadership. The problem is with our followers. The day Africans, and indeed Nigerians, own their representation and they don't sell the right, that day, sanity will come into our system. There are a whole lot of people who are pathetic to voting and say, well, I can't even go out to go and vote. Those who are mobilized to come out, once they resist mobilization, and all of us are coming out to say, look, this state belongs to us, and we want to have a say in how this is governed, and we are not going to collect your money, we are going to vote for you based on merit so that you can go and represent our interests. When this gross misconduct starts to happen, these people who are representative of people will stand up on behalf of the people. We always see them say, I am representing my people when they are in trouble. When they are sharing the allowance, they don't remember their people.
Okay, Doc, now you mentioned people. You only see the people saying we are recalling when there seems to be political motivation. You don't see the people say we're recalling because you have not delivered what you promised your constituency. So people, is it not time the electorate wake up?
Wake up.
Realize their responsibilities.
Wake up.
The state assemblies and the national assemblies that are vested with the power to act as checks to the governors, checks to the presidents and the vice president. What are you doing with that power? It will be for the benefit of us all. It will play our roles as it should be, removing sentiment. Yes, we're all a family in Nigeria. We should not be family alone when we are of the same political party. We should be a family as a nation that work for anything, move towards anything that will guarantee development. We'll leave it here and watch to see what happens at the National Assembly as it's bill's season. What bill will be the next and what bill will eventually become an act, even as the Constitution is being amended through several bills. each time Chuck's genre just comes on to talk about sports and he's talking about money, one thing comes to mind: catch them young. So you need to look for those talents and catch them young. If you're a parent and you have kids playing around and you're saying to that young child, you run too much, always running around in the house, perhaps you think, what talent, what sports and talent could this child have so that you could be making some money off sport? That is to say that there's lots and lots of money to be made from sports. Nigeria as a country should begin to look at that as well, not just from football, but other types of sports. Doc here has said he intends to play football. For what club, I don't know. But I too want to do sports. What sports? Someday you'll find out. I will tell you here on the front burners. But for now, it's a wrap on the show. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow will be the grand finale for the week. Yes, the last one for this week. I'm Blessing Eichie. I've done the show today with Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze and, of course, Oyinpreye Krumale. We'll see you again tomorrow. Gentlemen, say your goodbyes.
Well, Blessing, talking about catching them young, I'm still very young. Somebody should catch me.
Oh! that sounds romantic.
Be happy with the little you have. It doesn't really matter. There are a lot of people who have nothing, but they still manage to smile. Tomorrow is another day. We will be here on the front burners.
And I'm Oyinpreye Krumale. Good morning to you once again.